quite a lot to cover, and I wanted to give you an overview of what the Alzheimer's Association does, what we do locally here, what Alzheimer's disease is and what it isn't, who it affects, and what we're doing about it in terms of addressing what we see as the silver tsunami that's coming our way in terms of the astronomical increase in numbers of people who are living with Alzheimer's disease. So we're a 501c3 non-profit. We are the local chapter of a nationwide organization. Our mission, and I should know this by heart, but I don't, is to lead the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. So research, education, care and support are really what we're all about. And of course, our vision is ultimately a world without Alzheimer's disease. Wouldn't it be great? I'm sure many of you have been impacted by Alzheimer's or another form of dementia in your own families, and we all know how challenging it can be. In Nevada, there are about 55,000 people over the age of 65 who are living with Alzheimer's. So that's about 1 in 10. Obviously, your risk of developing Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia increases as you age. So most of those people are going to be in their 80s, 90s, but it's a number that's increasing rapidly and we want to do something about it. We also know there are about 84,000 unpaid caregivers. So typically that's family members, very often, sorry ladies, it's daughters, spouses who are caring for loved ones with dementia, often providing care around the clock at the expense of their own health. So a lot of our work is really around making sure that we are supporting people in their role as caregivers and that they are able to help keep their loved one at home, as independent, as autonomous for as long as they possibly can. So, I have a fact sheet here about the costs of Alzheimer's disease, the prevalence, but just know it's an incredibly common disease, it's an incredibly expensive one, and there's a lot of work going on locally, legislatively, federally to try to do something about it. What we do know about Alzheimer's disease is that it is one form of dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term that refers to a number of different brain diseases, Alzheimer's being the most common. Alzheimer's is responsible for about 70% of cases. It's, of course, ultimately fatal. It is a brain disease. And as I said, it's the most common form. Other forms of dementia include frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia that can come from strokes, Lewy body dementia that is can be seen in Parkinson's disease. And then there are other forms of mixed dementia, and then others that may even be reversible, such as dementia that comes from unmanaged thyroid conditions, vitamin deficiencies. Depression can sometimes mimic some of the symptoms of dementia. So that's really why we're always encouraging people who talk to us to seek a diagnosis, to talk to their primary care provider, find out what's going on, get some testing done, report the symptoms that they're experiencing, and make sure that they're getting ahead of what's happening so they can understand what to do next. There are a number of myths and facts around Alzheimer's disease, and I'm really happy to tell you, sometimes people get confused on this slide. So I'm going to tell you all of these are myths, and many of them you may have heard of and you may think are true. But memory loss is not a natural part of aging. Obviously, there's some brain shrinkage as we age, but losing your memories to the extent that people with dementia do is not a natural occurrence. Alzheimer's disease is not fatal. Yes, it always is. Only older people get Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, that's not true. There are about 200,000 people under the age of 65 currently who are living with Alzheimer's disease. And we've worked with a number of people, even just recently in their 50s, who are experiencing Alzheimer's. So we know that we have to understand it better. Drinking out of aluminum cans, do you think that one's true? No, that's a myth. No, aluminum cans don't cause Alzheimer's disease. Neither does aspartame, the artificial sweeteners that you can get in diet sodas and so on. Flu shots don't cause Alzheimer's disease. Silver dental fillings, that's a really good one for me. So I grew up in England and I have lots of those. So they are not going to cause me to get dementia, fortunately. And what wasn't true up until what was true up until recently was that there were no medications available to treat Alzheimer's disease. Just in the last year or so, 3 medications have been approved by the FDA. 2 of them have been approved by CMS, and so they are available for Medicare beneficiaries to treat Alzheimer's in the earliest stages. They're infusion therapies, and they are shown to clear the plaques that we associate with being the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. So we know there are providers in town who are actually able to administer those, and we know that there are people who are receiving those treatments right now. So up until recently, there have been medications available to treat symptoms such as agitation, and all they could do was just kind of mitigate or modify some of those things for a limited period of time. But they couldn't treat Alzheimer's itself. So it's a really exciting time, and part of the funding that we are able to raise helps not the pharmaceutical companies, but helps people get diagnosed so they can be eligible to being engaged in those treatments. So what do we know about the warning signs of Alzheimer's disease? Like, we all forget things, right? I know, I live in a 2-story house and I can't tell you how many times I go upstairs or downstairs and I think, what did I come up here for? What am I looking for? What was I doing? Looking for my keys, looking for my phone, looking for my glasses. I'm always looking for something. So not being able to retrace your steps is something to be concerned about. So if you can go back in, you think, oh yeah, it was my keys I was looking for. But if you forget why you have a set of keys, that you own a car or you have a home that has a lock on the door or an office with a lock, then that's something to be concerned about. And if you see that in yourself or a loved one, then we encourage people to just kind of keep a journal of that. Keep some notes so you can be ready to have that conversation with a healthcare provider when it comes up. Challenges in planning, solving problems, things that we could easily do in the past, like calling the plumber or following a recipe, something like that. But it becomes more difficult when that executive functioning in your brain is compromised and you're not as easily able to do that as you were in the past. Confusion with time or place is something that we hear about frequently as well. As the disease progresses, we know about wandering, right? I think we've all heard and seen silver alerts, people who go outside in their pajamas in the middle of winter, or they're wearing many, many layers when it's 104 degrees outside, confused about the seasons, confused about the time of day. Circadian rhythm can be severely disrupted in people who are living with Alzheimer's. So those are things to know about as well. New problems with words, not being able to find your words. We worked with a gentleman who couldn't remember the name for a wristwatch, and he called it a hand clock. So we always knew what he was talking about when he referred to his hand clock. Those words that just don't come to mind quite as easily or at all as they once did. Decreased or poor judgment, and I'm sure many of you have heard about this, especially working with older adults. Financial scams, romance scams, people who've given away their money to a long-lost boyfriend from decades ago who wants to resume a romantic relationship with them, and unscrupulous people who extort money from people. It's just absolutely heartbreaking, and we hear about that over and over again. And of course, your judgment's impaired. If things aren't working as well as they did, then your judgment's severely impaired. And then what tends to happen is that people withdraw from social activities, not as engaged with family and friends as they once were, as they may know what's going on and understand that there are some changes occurring. So all of these things we want to help people to understand. We want to raise and elevate the conversation, reduce the stigma, so we can help people to confront what's happening at an earlier stage than sometimes they have. We know that risk factors include age, right? Your greatest risk is age. Family history. If you have close family members who have had Alzheimer's disease or any other form of dementia, then chances are you may develop them, but you also may not. You're not necessarily going to live with Alzheimer's for the rest of your life just because your parents did. There is a genetic component. See, I can't make my words today. If you have 2 copies of the APOE4 gene, then you are more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. And so we do encourage people to get genetically tested if they have that family history. If you're interested in the research, there are some really interesting studies in Colombia. 60 Minutes has covered this for many years. A cohort of a community, a population, 90% of these people develop Alzheimer's disease because they carry this gene or 2 copies of this gene. So, but other risk factors that you may be able to influence: don't get head injuries. Wear helmets all the time. Wherever you go, wear a helmet and you're not going to get a head injury. But we know we do see dementia in NFL players, people, athletes, people who have had head injuries more extensively as a result. Even as younger people, concussions can lead to dementia. The heart-head connection, and I could go on about this for hours. This is my 3-hour subject. Heart problems. Every time your heart beats, it pumps 40% of that blood to your brain. If that blood is oxygenated, healthy, it's getting to your brain, it stands to reason that your brain is going to stay healthy. So get up and walk. Sitting is the new smoking, right? So get some cardiovascular exercise, go outside, take the stairs, park further away so you can walk a little further to your office. Do what you can to make sure that you're maintaining a healthy heart for as long as possible. And then just overall aging well, being socially connected, doing jigsaw puzzles, Wordle, Sudoku, being around other people, learning new things, learning a language, taking a class. Those are all the kinds of things that challenge your brain, your mind, and help people to stay healthy. So what are we doing to make sure that we're providing services to people who need them in the community? Well, we're encouraging people to understand early detection, the importance of early detection, to get a diagnosis, to talk about what's going on, and to follow up with that. If you see changes in yourself or a loved one, talk about them. The Medicare annual wellness visit, and I know all of you are way too young for Medicare, but if you have any relatives or friends who are, your primary care provider is supposed to ask you about your memory as part of the annual wellness visit, and that doesn't always happen. There's a lot going on when you're dealing with diabetes, hypertension, other things. It's hard to always make sure that that's addressed. So bring it up. Talk about memory. Ask your doctor to tell you about memory. And then that should initiate follow-up if there are things that need to be considered as far as memory is concerned. Where are we? We do know that there are some things that we can do to delay or prevent the onset of cognitive decline. We talked about heart health, right? Do you want me to am I done? No? Okay. We talked about heart health, but we have a whole class about the 10 healthy habits that you can develop and implement to make sure that your brain is healthy. And they include good sleep. When you're sleeping, and this is in very clumsy layman's terms, your brain is literally getting rid of the trash that's in your brain, right? You wake up feeling refreshed. You can face the day. If your sleep isn't good, if you snore, if you have sleep apnea, if you experience insomnia, it's not good for your cognitive health. So make sure that you're sleeping well, doing all of the things to make sure that your sleep hygiene is good. Exercise, smoking, sticking to, not smoking. So vaping. Here in casinos, we've worked with a number of people over the years who have been casino workers and who now are in their 70s and 80s, spent their whole career working in a casino, were not smokers, but now they are dealing with the effects of secondhand smoke. Excuse me. So there is a lot that you can do to keep your brain as healthy as possible for as long as possible, which delays the costs of care and all of the other things that are associated with that. Okay, thank you.